Morning, everyone. My allotted journal is British Heart Journal, and the article is Cardiovascular Manifestations and Treatment Considerations in COVID-19. And my moderator is Dr. Aditi. So, as you all know, COVID-19 is very prevalent nowadays, and it is caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. The first case was in Wuhan, China on 31st December 2019. And the common symptoms, as we all know, presenting symptoms are fever and upper respiratory tract symptoms like dry cough, and vague symptoms like myalgia or fatigue. One of the earlier articles that quantified patients affected by COVID-19 uh, found that only 13.9% patients had severe symptoms, which is defined by tachypnea, respiratory rate of more than 30 per minute, saturation less than equal to 93%, PO2 by FiO2 less than 300, and infiltration of lung field by imaging more than 50% within 24 to 48 hours. The same study found that only 4.7% of the patients were critically ill, which is defined by the respiratory failure, septic shock, or multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. In severe or critical disease, patients progress to something called the cytokine storm, which we'll talk about later. And the patients having a cardiovascular comorbidity were found to have higher mortality. It doesn't necessarily mean that patients having cardiovascular comorbidities are more susceptible to COVID-19, but when they do get it, they have a higher mortality. And it correlates with the severity of the COVID-19 uh, infection. So, prevalence of cardiovascular diseases was found to be similar in general population patients affected with COVID-19 in USA and China populations. For example, here you can see that patients affected with COVID-19 in USA, um, there were 9% of them who had cardiovascular disease, and in the general population in USA, 9% of people have cardiovascular disease. So these two numbers are similar. Similarly, in China, 4.2% people affected with COVID-19 had cardiovascular disease, and in general, 3.7% people in China have cardiovascular comorbidities. A retrospective single-center case series of 187 patients with the underlying cardiovascular disease, um, they were more likely to have cardiac injury, which is evident by elevated troponin, than patients without any underlying cardiovascular disease. In the same study, it was found that a higher mortality is present in those patients with underlying cardiovascular disease with or without elevated troponin. So, if there is a independent troponin elevation with or without underlying cardiovascular disease, that was also found to affect mortality in patients affected with COVID-19 patients, and they had a higher mortality. So if you have underlying cardiovascular disease, you're more prone to severe complications of COVID-19 according to this study. So this article basically compares the COVID-19 virus to the SARS, MERS, and the influenza virus. So, as we can see, the case fatality rate of COVID-19 is quite less compared to SARS and MERS, which is only 2.3%. Okay, it's more than influenza, but we know influenza is very common, and also here we can see that patients affected with cardiovascular disease have a higher odds ratio in COVID-19. So that doesn't, which is also similar to the SARS virus. So underlying cardiovascular disease is an important comorbidity. Uh, it can tell us whether what is the prognosis of the patient based on the um, underlying diseases. So, if a patient has cardiovascular disease, it's a marker of accelerated aging, immune system dysregulation, and of course, like I said, it affects the prognosis of the disease in patients affected with COVID-19. What is the pathophysiology of cardiac injury? So the SARS-CoV-2 virus is an enveloped positive sense single-stranded RNA virus. So it has been postulated that they use the ACE2 protein, which is a membrane protein, and it has a high expression in type 2 lung alveolar cells for ligand binding before entering the cell. So it is said that the SARS-CoV-2 virus has greater transmissibility due to a tighter interaction with the human ACE2 receptor binding domain. So the virus binds to this membrane protein before entering the cell, and since there is a high expression in the lungs, that can explain the respiratory symptoms. And ACE2 protein is also present in lungs, in heart, kidney, etc. Hence, um, telling us that those organs also might be affected in a patient infected with COVID-19 virus. The cell, basically the virus enters the cell by receptor mediated endocytosis. So cardiomyocyte has a positive ACE2 expression. So when it enters into the cardiomyocyte, it causes direct cardiotoxicity. And in some studies, the viral particles have been demonstrated in the cardiac tissue by RT-PCR. So we know that the virus can cause direct cardiotoxicity. So what happens when the virus enters the cell? It creates a hyperinflammatory state, and it causes cytokine release, and there is vascular inflammation, plaque instability, myocardial inflammation, hypercoagulable state, and direct myocardial suppression. Also, cardiac injury caused by sepsis and DIC mediated mechanisms as well. The pathological findings in the cardiac tissue is interstitial inflammatory infiltration, myocyte necrosis, and in the vasculature there is vascular microthrombosis and vascular inflammation. So, what are the cardiovascular manifestations of patients affected by the COVID-19? There is elevation of cardiac biomarkers that we will see. There are ischemic mechanisms and non-ischemic mechanisms. Cardiac arrhythmia, which can be new onset or it can be a progressed arrhythmia. We'll come to that later. Arterial or venous thromboembolism, cardiogenic shock and cardiac arrest in critically ill and severe patients. So this is a diagram depicting possible mechanisms of cardiovascular injury due to COVID-19. So the SARS-CoV-2 virus can cause direct cardiotoxicity by binding to the ACE2 protein and causing receptor-mediated endocytosis of the virus directly in the cardiomyocyte. Uh, there can be so the SARS-CoV-2 virus affects the lungs as well, like we saw. So the cardiac injury can be hypoxia mediated, where there is a demand versus supply mismatch, and it can cause the virus itself can cause a cytokine storm, and disseminated intravascular coagulation can also mediate cardiac injury. So what are the manifestations? They can mimic acute coronary syndromes. They can cause arrhythmias. They can cause myocarditis or stress-induced cardiomyopathy. They can cause thromboembolisms in the arterial and venous system, and they can cause heart failure and cardiogenic shock. in patients who previously don't have a history of any LV dysfunction. We'll come to this. So elevated cardiac biomarkers. Myocardial injury, as I said, correlates with the severity of COVID-19. So what is the definition of myocardial injury taken in this article was that elevation of high sensitivity cardiac troponin, or if it is above 99th percentile of its upper limit of normal, or there is evidence of new abnormalities seen in the ECG or the echo. So the pattern of rise of troponin can tell us the prognosis of the patient affected with COVID-19. For example, a patient with a higher level of elevation initially of this high sensitivity cardiac troponin with the progressive rise till death carries a poor prognosis. So coming to the mechanism of ischemic myocardial injury, the systemic inflammatory response syndrome increases plaque rupture, risk of plaque rupture and thrombosis. This is known as type 1 myocardial infarction, which is caused due to the plaque rupture and thrombosis. So it can be ST elevation versus non-ST elevation. If it involves the respiratory system, because of the high expression of ACE2 protein on type 2 alveolar cells, lung alveolar cells, it decreases oxygen delivery to myocardium. So there is hypoxemia and vasoconstriction. It can cause sepsis-like hemodynamic effects due to increased myocardial demand. So this supply-demand mismatch will cause something called a type 2 myocardial infarction. Troponin levels are sometimes not reliable as in myocardial infarction due to non-obstructive coronaries. So they can be elevated in MI due to non-obstructive coronaries. So in these cases, it might not be a reliable indicator for a acute coronary syndrome. Myocardial injury with disseminated intravascular coagulation. So as a marker of severe sepsis, there is damage due to thrombosis, reduced perfusion and bleeding. So there is thrombosis of the epicardial vessels and the coronary microvasculature, and focal necrosis of myocardium and severe cardiac dysfunction. So severe sepsis and DIC can also independently cause myocardial injury, is what we are trying to say. Non-ischemic myocardial injury is also found in patients affected with COVID-19. This is in form of myocarditis and stress-induced cardiomyopathy, in which there might be mild or absent respiratory symptoms, and acute heart failure or cardiogenic shock in a patient without a history of LV systolic function previously. So there's something called cytokine release syndrome. So the virus itself causes something called a cytokine storm. So it releases these cytokines, interleukin 6, interleukin 1, TNF alpha in large numbers, and causes a hyperinflammatory state. So we have all heard about this tocilizumab. We'll come to it later, which targets interleukin 6. There is interleukin 1 and TNF alpha, which are the important inflammatory cytokines, and elevated IL-6 and ferritin cause are markers of poor prognosis. So we are comparing COVID-19 to SARS, MERS and influenza. So in terms of cytokine release, this is similar. It's a similar phenomena to these other viruses as well. This can depress the myocardial function acutely by activation of sphingomyelinase pathway, and subacutely by nitric oxide mediated blunting of beta signaling pathway. So patients affected with COVID-19 can also present as arrhythmias, which can be new onset or progressive. This is found more commonly in ICU patients, 44% versus 6.9% arrhythmias found in patients who are non-critical. Elevated troponin levels are found to be associated with malignant arrhythmias, which are hemodynamically unstable ventricular tachycardias or ventricular fibrillations, which are so 11.5% patients who had elevated troponin levels had malignant arrhythmias versus 5.2% patients who had malignant arrhythmias didn't have any elevated troponins. This is a clinically significant finding. So coming to venous thromboembolism, this patients affected with COVID-19 are prone to these four things: prolonged immobilization, hypercoagulable status, active inflammation, and DIC. These in turn increase the risk of venous thromboembolism, which includes pulmonary embolism. So patients who are affected by COVID-19 are also at a higher risk of venous thromboembolism, and we can see them by high levels of D-dimer, fibrin degradation products, and fibrinogen, which is a marker of severe disease and marker of poor prognosis. So coming to treatment considerations, as we all know, there is no proven therapy that we are currently using, and as it concerns the cardiovascular manifestations, um, as stated previously, ST elevation and non-ST elevation MI, we have to consider primary PCI versus thrombolysis based on when the patient has come. Myocardial injury obviously has a worse prognosis, as we saw. So we have to monitor the rising trends of cardiac biomarkers like troponin. And we can consider thromboprophylaxis if a patient is in a hypercoagulable state. ACE inhibitor or ARB use is controversial because of the ACE2 protein that the virus uses to enter the cell. But as of now, the protocol is to continue the treatment with ACE inhibitors or ARBs currently. No need to stop them and await further studies. Hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, and azithromycin have been proven to be useful in COVID-19 patients, but they cause a QT prolongation, so that has to be monitored. We can think of immunosuppression and immunomodulatory drugs if a patient is affected by cytokine storm, and mechanical circulatory support in the form of IABP or ECMO can be used in patients with cardiogenic shock. So anticoagulant therapy, as I said, can be thought of for prophylaxis for arterial and venous thromboembolism risk. One of the studies was found that heparin in patients with sepsis-induced coagulopathy and high D-dimers had lower mortality. We have to be careful of the drug-to-drug interactions with antivirals like ribavirin, lopinavir, and ritonavir, which we are looking at to treat the patients affected with COVID-19. And low molecular weight heparin is preferred in the critically ill patients. So ACE inhibitor and ARBs are RAS inhibitors. They increase ACE2 expression. So after entry into the cell, actually SARS-CoV-2 downregulates the ACE2 expression. So this is vital for the maintenance of the cardiac function. Reduction of ACE2 expression is also associated with increased severity of lung injury induced by, as seen in the influenza virus. So as of now, the protocol is to continue the ACE inhibitors or ARBs if the patient is in stable condition, and wait for further study. HCQ and chloroquine. Chloroquine is a bioactive agent with antiviral activity in vitro, and HCQ is an antiviral, has antiviral activity, plus it has a modulating effect on the activated immune cells to decrease the interleukin 6 expression, which, as we saw, is one of the major interleukins in the cytokine storm. So side effects are a prolonged QT, especially by combination therapy. So we have to monitor this very carefully. And uh, administration of hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine was found superior to control treatment of resolving pneumonia. So so these two agents are recommended, and azithromycin is a macrolide antibiotic which is found to be effective against the Zika and Ebola virus in vitro. So it is found as a appropriate adjunctive therapy to hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine. But as we all know, it also prolongs QT, so we have to be mindful of that. Immunosuppressive therapy. Comparing to SARS and MERS virus, corticosteroids might exacerbate lung injury. So we have to weigh this against the detrimental effects of cytokine storm. So it can be useful in patients with severe disease, uh, as we can see by these markers: ESR, ferritin, D dimers, and thrombocytopenia. And anti-IL-6 receptor Ig monoclonal antibody tocilizumab has been used in patients successfully with cytokine storm. But what is the actual usefulness of this drug is not well documented. There's another sarilumab IL-6 inhibitor which is also under scrutiny for immunosuppression. Mechanical cardiopulmonary support is required in cardiogenic shock. So we can think about ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, and IABP, intra-aortic balloon pump, in these patients affected with who are critically ill in COVID-19 infection. And you have to be mindful about patient selection and what are their comorbidities, what are the possible complications we can face in such patients, and what is the mode of mechanical support that we want to provide these patients. So in conclusion, uh, COVID-19 is similar to SARS and MERS with regard to host vulnerability, especially in patients with cardiovascular comorbidities who are found to have higher mortality. There is a greater transmissibility of the COVID-19, which is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, especially because of tighter integration with the human ACE2 membrane protein. This is what has led to the global pandemic that we are in now. And the COVID-19 virus can cause myocardial injury, which which is a marker of poor prognosis. Thank you.